the 2015 win, Justin Trudeau swiftly started to advance his agendas, the first of which was legalizing medical assistance in dying, which is soon to be expanded to the non-terminal, to the addicted, to the depressed, and to the mentally ill. And there's also a push, I just saw CTV today said that they're now doing another study about expanding assisted suicide even more, possibly to mature minors. What does that mean? That possibly a 14, 15-year-old who is depressed, struggling with cutting, struggling with pornography, struggling with self-hate, if they could find a counselor that would allow them to be classified as a mature minor. We don't know where this is going, but it is conceivable that that young person could be eligible for assisted suicide. You know, through my show, I hear from a lot of seniors and families of seniors, and we have heard more times than we can count of people being offered assisted suicide for non-terminal issues. One of our good friends, his dad fell, broke his hip. He's 80 years old. The doctor says, you're on the downcline. You're going to die anyway. Pretty soon you'll probably never heal because your body is at that phase where it doesn't heal perfectly. And so you're basically terminal is kind of how they classified it. Offered him assisted suicide, and my friend's father took it without his family even knowing. Canada now has the loosest laws on assisted suicide in the entire world with the least amount of protections. This hits hard, hey, Tamara? Whew, okay, let's keep going. In 2018, marijuana was legalized for youth. I want to park on this for a second because all of the medical experts at the time were saying, listen, Justin Trudeau and your Liberals, if you're going to legalize cannabis, do it for 25 and older, because the human brain is not finished developing up until about that point. And as a matter of fact, between the age of 18 and 25, this is when the executive level portion of the brain develops. This is where your academics are, your lawyers, your thought leaders, your doctors, your surgeons, your innovators that will solve the future's problems. This is where they are created. When that part of the brain is developed, those are the people that you have. And so they were saying, do not do this for youth, because if you do, you will actually be stunting the future intellectual property of the nation. And they rammed it through anyway. 2019, the House of Commons gave a standing ovation. Tamara, you were in the House of Commons at this time, weren't you? Okay, I can't remember all the dates. In 2019, they gave a standing ovation to the status quo on abortion. What is the status quo? Right now in Canada, because there are no laws on abortion, you can abort a baby right up until full term. Right up until 40 weeks, that baby can be perfectly healthy. The mother can be perfectly healthy. The marriage can fall apart. She can be pressured into it. And if that woman can't find somebody in Canada to do the procedure, the Canadian government will fly that woman to Boulder, Colorado, because there's actually a surgeon in Boulder, Colorado that specializes in abortion for Canadian babies in the third trimester. And so a standing ovation was given to this, like not just a yay, nay, assent, but like a roaring standing ovation. You can Google it. Let's continue on. In 2021, the government pledged to remove charitable status for pregnancy care centers, which is actually set to trigger pretty much any day, I'm told. 2021, that bill passed that could lead to clergy people being put into prison for up to 5 years for counseling someone on a sexual issue, even if that person is asking for the counseling. And this, as I already mentioned, was forwarded by the conservative leader at the time, passed without committee study or debate. The federal debt has doubled in 2 years, and it is now pressing towards $1.2 trillion. I did some research on this and discovered that when I was born, my portion of the federal debt was about $800. Going into the pandemic in 2020, every one of us had a portion of the federal debt that was between $17,000 and $18,000. Today, just 2 years later, every single one of us and our children and our grandma and our cousin owe $30,000 to our portion just of the federal debt. That's not including the provincial debt. And it's widely agreed that the only way you can solve this is through inflation or through increased taxation or, heaven forbid, developing the oil and gas sector. So, these are not small things. These are not small things. And, my Bible says that the righteous leave an inheritance. I don't believe that these are political issues. I believe these are righteousness issues. And things that I believe that the Lord cares deeply about. And what does it mean to love your neighbor? Is loving our neighbor meaning that they can be coerced into medical assistance and dying? Is loving our neighbor leaving a federal debt of this magnitude for a child? It is not. And so I believe that this isn't about politics. This is about principle. This is about integrity. 2022, the Emergencies Act was invoked for the first time in history, with Canadian bank accounts being seized for political dissent. Conscience and mobility charter rights have been breached in the federal pandemic, with so many cases in the courts right now that the Honorable Brian Peckford's case won't even be heard until the fall, even though it should be prioritized. It can't be. All of this has led to massive Western alienation, political division, cancel culture in politics, and let's just say it, division. Division in our ministerials, division in our churches, division in our businesses, division in our families. We've talked to people that have said that they have siblings that aren't even talking to each other over the vaccine mandate. You judge a tree by its fruit, and this is some really, really tough fruit. So let's carry on. So you might be looking at this and thinking, okay, but come on, Feytene, you're being a little bit dramatic here. This isn't just because of the 2013 federal election and 81,000 people that voted for Justin Trudeau. It's also because of what happened in the federal election. And I would say you are absolutely right. So let's crack that open as well. For the sake of time, I'm not going to look at 2015 and 19. I'm going to go right to 2021. Let's look at what happened there. In 2021, this was the result of that election. The Liberals took home 160, the NDP 25, the Green 2, the Bloc 32, and the Conservatives 19, which was functionally a Liberal majority. There were 151 seats on the right-hand side. I'll explain why I put those together in a moment, and 187 on the left-hand side there. In February, the Honorable Candice Bergen, the interim leader of the Conservative Party, put forward a motion. What was this motion? It was a motion for Justin Trudeau to give us a date and a plan. That was it. Give us a date and a plan. Canadians have been playing ball for 2 years. Their lives have been shut down. Many have lost businesses. Justin Trudeau, would you please give us a date and a plan? And so the Bloc and the Conservatives were like, yeah, they banded together and they voted for that date and for that plan. So I call this like the freedom vote here on the right, 151. But the other three on the other side banded together to say, nope, no date, no plan, keep the controls on. Because of that 187, we had a wedding. We had a marriage in the House of Commons where the NDP and the Liberals tied the knot, went public about 6 weeks ago and said that they are going to prop one another up right up until 2025, unless this kind of falls apart. What does that mean practically? Well, practically, it probably means that things will continue in the same trajectory, only without any checks or balances, without any opposition, because you can't overpower a majority coalition vote. And so I asked this question because I'd been thinking a lot about swing ridings. The nuns that I hung out with in Liberia, they used to have this saying. They said, you know it when you know it in your knower. And I just knew in my knower that the future of our nation was going to come down to the swing ridings. This is why I was on this so hard in 2019, 2021. You could just feel that the swing ridings were going to be the balance of power. It hasn't always been like this in our nation, but it has been like this the last few elections. And so I asked the question, what would it have taken to actually run interference on this NDP Liberal majority coalition that we could have right up until 2025? And the truth is it would have taken shifting those 20 ridings in the middle. That would have given 171 votes. On the Freedom side, would have given about 167 on the other side. And because the Conservatives and the Bloc disagree with each other on a lot of stuff, it would have maintained the integrity of a minority parliament where all of the parties would have had to work together, bill by bill, issue by issue, policy by policy, to move things through for the betterment of all Canadians. So this is where you guys come in. Actually, you guys come in the whole way. But I looked at the closest 20 ridings. What were the ridings that where the winner won by the least vote margin, or the loser lost by the least vote margin? And Châteauguay-Lacolle, there was actually a 12-vote differential in that one. So literally in that one, Kevin, honestly, somebody would have just had to show up, say, hey, you guys are awesome, make a pot of coffee, leave, and that person probably would have won the election. Like the volunteer input to shift 12 votes was really, really little, really, really tiny. I'm joking around a little bit, but all 20 of those ridings together totaled a total of 21,900 votes. You'll see a few ridings in there that you recognize. Number 8 was Richmond Centre. The winner only won by 772 votes. Cloverdale Langley City, 1,654 votes. And probably a few other. I was told that Sydney, Victoria was nearby here as well. So these are extremely small margins. So when somebody gets up in the national news and says, well, this is what Canadians voted for, that's a little bit of a stretch. That's what about 21,900 Canadians voted for in key battle zone ridings, a few of which are within driving distance from this very church here, one of which is very, very close from this church here to this church here. Yeah, I know. That's how I feel too. Yeah. And so I pulled out my calculator and found that number was even smaller than the 0.2, obviously, because 21,900 is smaller than 80,000. 0.05% of Canadians determined the NDP Liberal coalition that will most likely be our life right up until 2025. Can we handle another 3 years? I don't know. I think a lot of us are asking this question. So I asked this, what would it have taken to shift these 20 ridings? Well, because of my run, I knew that statistically, one person volunteering once a week for 3 hours over the duration of a campaign, which is only an average of 6 weeks, is expected to identify 50 supportive voters. Doing the math on that, that simply means that 438 volunteers in 20 swing ridings, probably about 30 volunteers in your riding, Tamara, would have shifted those 21,900 votes. And I look at this number, and honestly, I think, how many times have we had a cry with 5,000 people? How hard is it to get a conference with 440 people? No, not at all. That's one Facebook ad, It's for the hungry, right? These are not big numbers. And I don't think we get the outcomes that we get sometimes on these levels because we're not powerful. It's just because we're not present. And so my people perish for lack of knowledge, right? So I told you this was going to be an intelligence briefing, right? Are you feeling a little bit more intelligent? We're all looking a little bit more intelligent, maybe, I don't know, hope so. So those 438 would have broken up this political coalition. These are very tiny numbers. That would be, again, to draw an analogy, that would be like taking a tiny little Lego block and putting it against the CN Tower or the tower in downtown Vancouver and saying that this little tiny Lego block overpowered the entire tower. Once again, a very small group of people in a targeted area had a massive amount of influence over our nation. Maybe I kind of want to put it this way tonight. Over our families, over our businesses, over our churches, over us, right? Because we are Canada. We are the nation. Okay. So lest you think I'm just picking on Justin Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh, I'm going to continue to pick on the Conservatives as well, because this needs to be an authentically nonpartisan presentation, right, Kevin? Okay, so let's talk about the Conservative leadership race in 2020. In that race, 174,000 and change Canadians voted in that leadership race about 2 years ago. And Aaron O'Toole won on the third ballot with 90,000 votes, which meant that he was the leader of the Conservative Party going into the federal pandemic season. Once again, I pulled out my calculator and saw, what would be the chances of this? The exact same number, 0.2%. Are you getting fired up on the front row? I hope so. 0.2% of Canadians determined that Aaron O'Toole's name would be the one on the ballot going nose to nose against Justin Trudeau for the last 2 years. So again, I ask the question, who is this elite group? Who are these sharp pencils that just like show up in this moment that matters? And number one, I found out that the ones that crowned Aaron O'Toole king of the Conservative Castle for 2 years were those, number one, that got a membership for the Conservative Party so that they could vote. I'm sure there was a few of you in the room who did that. And number two, those that actually took time to vote. Now let's do a little trivia game here. Does anybody remember how many members of the Conservative Party that they had in 2020? Because they actually broke a record and it made national news. Does anybody remember? Does anybody know? It was about 250,000. So there was somewhere between 250, 270,000 Canadians that signed up, had an active membership, and about 80,000 of them were raptured. On the week of the vote, they just didn't show up for the vote. And so we still to this day don't know what might have happened if those 80,000 had actually showed up. What was the cost to the ones that did show up and even the ones that didn't? The cost of a membership in 2020 was just $15. It's actually one of the few things that hasn't been affected by inflation. So nobody tell the Conservative Party, okay? So $15, and it still is today. And number two, it actually only took a couple of minutes to fill out that ballot and return it. Particularly if you were on the email list for an organization like ours or CLC or Right Now, because we gave Voters Guide. It was so easy. You could have done it walking backwards, blindfolded, chewing gum. And so once again, a very, very small price, tiny price to pay for a massive amount of influence over whether or not Canada would have an official opposition, or a more conservative opposition. I don't want to show too much disrespect here, over the last couple of years. Now, what I find fascinating, though, about this particular political outcome is that even though Aaron O'Toole won the leadership, did you guys know that he didn't get the most votes? This woman right here did. Dr. Leslyn Lewis. And so Dr. Leslyn Lewis got what's called the popular vote. And this is where the intelligence gets a little bit, to me, this was an eye-opener. In order to win the leadership of a political party, it's not the person who gets the most votes, it's the person who wins the most ridings. And each riding, no matter how many people vote in that riding, have the same amount of points. They get 100 points. It's the maximum that a riding can get. Okay, so if you look up here on the map, Dr. Leslyn Lewis won all the green areas. This is on the second ballot. Aaron O'Toole won the blue areas. The red areas were won by Peter MacKay on the second ballot when Leslyn Lewis actually dropped off. So I want to compare riding to riding here. I did some research recently and found out that the riding that recently has had the most amount of Conservative members in it is actually Simcoe North in Ontario. And so these are just me estimating. I don't work for the Conservative Party. Nobody's leaking information to me. I just know how to research, okay? So Simcoe North, let's say that in that leadership election in 2020, Simcoe North had 1,125 people that voted for Dr. Leslyn Lewis. She would get 75 points for those 1,125 votes. Let's say Aaron O'Toole got 375 votes. In that riding, he would get 25. Let's shoot across the nation to Port Moody, Coquitlam, who traditionally has well under 500 members, as I understand it. When I ran in my election, when I first started in the city of St. John, 80,000 people, there were only 300 people who actually had an active member. So 300 people were positioned to decide for 80,000 whether or not I would be on the ballot or somebody else. And so in Port Moody, Coquitlam, 375 people, that same 375 people voting for Erin O'Toole this time would get 75 points. And if Leslyn got 100 votes in that riding, she would only get 20 points. So my point is this. It's actually the areas of the nation, ironically, that are the battlegrounds, that are the least conservative at times, where just a few people getting involved, getting a membership, taking a few minutes, voting for the person that most reflects their views and values. These are the regions that they actually call super regions, super ridings, because these are the ones that in the end will most likely determine who the leader of the party is and possibly the next prime minister. So I did a little bit of research here for you guys, and I found out most likely, obviously I don't have the most up-to-date number because again, I am not the Conservative Party, but traditionally, these ridings, Vancouver Kingsway, Surrey Newton, Vancouver East, Surrey Centre, Vancouver South, Burnaby South, Stevenson, Richmond East, Richmond Centre, Delta Park, lots of places y'all know, right? Most of these ridings traditionally have had less than 500 active members in the Conservative Party. So that means one church, 2 churches, 3 churches maybe if you want to be safe. Waking up, not necessarily telling their people how to vote, obviously, but giving their people good information, educating them on the civic engagement process, encouraging their people to vote. If I had to choose between voting in a general election where my vote was 1 against 20,000, or voting in a leadership race where my vote was 1 against 500, like which one would you want to vote in? The leadership race. Because once the names get on the ballot, you can't change them, and your vote has way less value in a general election. My people perish for lack of knowledge. Like, man, if we'd just been talking this way for the last 10 years, where would Canada be? That's a real question. So, everybody take out your phone, take a picture of this right now. Or go back on the live stream, okay? Anyone who gives us their email tonight will send out this list. Okay, so in order to win, you need to win the most ridings. My point about the Leslyn Lewis, Erin O'Toole comparison is that it was actually extremely close. It was very close. And so I asked the question to some people who understand these things better than I do, what would it have taken to actually pop Leslyn over the top? What would it have taken for her to actually win? And I was surprised, once again, by what I learned. Like, we're not talking thousands. We're not even talking hundreds. We're talking dozens of people determining who leads our nation. Okay, let's go right down to the bottom here. I learned that an average of 57 votes per riding in about 149 ridings, if she would have just gotten 57 votes in about 149 ridings, she would have been the leader of the Conservative Party for the last 2 years. And you know, I don't mean to be too feisty here, but I just have a hunch that Justin Trudeau would have had a really hard time calling her a racist if she went out and talked to the truckers, you know what I mean? Or a woman hater or any of that kind of stuff, right? Like it would have been, just her presence, just her package would have diffused some of the toxicity of the conversation over at least the last 6 months. And so, again, one person volunteering 3 to 4 hours a week over 6 weeks most likely would have made the difference. So again, I don't know how many people there are in the room here, but we're probably pushing near 149, maybe near 100. I don't know. I haven't counted. I'm not that good at estimating, actually. These are not big numbers. These are just smart opportunities, right? If Leslyn Lewis would have been the leader, this is the leader that we would have had in the House of Commons. She is pro-freedom. Obviously, she was one of the first to speak out about the government should not coerce people into a medical decision that they don't want. She actually lost a shadow cabinet position over that, speaking out for some of the parents in her riding. I have a lot of respect for somebody who's willing to pay a price for principle. She is a pro-fiscal stewardship candidate, as most of them are, pro-resource, pro-parental rights. She just came out in this campaign saying that if she's elected this time, she will bring forward a parental charter of rights so that no matter what the provinces do with education or with health care, that parents will have a protected right to raise their children in accordance with their conscience. She's pro-faith, she's pro-life, she's been on record for that. She's the only pro-life candidate this time. She was one of two last time. She has an environmental master's degree, so she could speak to the carbon capture conversation, the clean energy development conversation with a high level of credibility and academic intuition. She probably could have won in some of the urban centers, particularly the GTA, just by virtue of the fact that one of the areas the Conservatives need to do better is with the ethnic vote, even more than Quebec. They need to do better with the ethnic vote in the urban centers. And she probably would have brought a few women into the election. So I want to say this, though. Full disclosure, this is not a Dr. Leslyn Lewis campaign tour. When I started this tour, we didn't even know if she was going to be on the ballot or not. But I do think she's awesome. That's no surprise. My point is this, is that it would have been a very different kind of leadership, and for sure that bill wouldn't have passed without debate or committee study. So to recap, real quick, the data, the facts and stats part of the presentation. 0.2% of Canadians determined that Justin Trudeau would be on the ballot and that Erin O'Toole would be on the ballot for Prime Minister. 438 volunteers placed in the swing ridings would have run interference, most likely, on the NDP Liberal coalition. That could be our soup and oatmeal right up until 2025. And 149 volunteers could have likely secured a win for Dr. Leslyn Lewis in 2020. Bottom line, a very small group of people engaging in elections through voting and volunteering can and have determined the course of our entire nation over the last 5 to 7 years. Members who vote, it's important not just to be a member, but actually a voting member, are very powerful. And volunteers who get involved in battleground ridings, like a few of them within the footprint, the sonic footprint of this church, are very, very powerful when we're in a political climate like we are right now. So I don't know how you're feeling right now, but this is kind of how I was feeling. I actually had to Google spilt milk because I'm like, this is the graphic. Like, man, when I saw how small these numbers were, I was like, really? Are you kidding me? 149 people? Like, I couldn't believe it, particularly when you consider the cost. You know, that I hadn't seen my mom for 2.5 years because of the craziness of the federal mandates. I saw my grandmother for the first time in 2.5 years these last couple of years. My kids haven't been able to go to a library, haven't been able to play soccer. Like, you know, when you consider the cost, right, it's a pretty tough pill to swallow, but this is the point, I think, where we put on our big boy pants and our big girl pants and we say, listen, there's no use crying over spilt milk, right? We can't change the past. But I believe that a wise person, an intelligent person, a champion, a winner, an overcomer, to he who overcomes, I will give you authority in the nations. You know, an overcomer will take the pain and turn it into power. That we won't allow ourselves to be overcome with hopelessness. We won't assume that somebody else is going to rise up to be the champion to turn it. But we study the game. We study the game film, and we approach it differently the next time, particularly when it's this winnable, when it's a shiftable, right? I hope you're feeling some hope in your heart tonight. But we do have to start with honesty. It's true. We could have stopped the legalization of medical assistance in dying for the non-terminal. And we could have stopped the legalization, of marijuana for our youth and young adults. We could have stopped the removal of charity status from our pregnancy care centers. We could have stopped possibly the doubling of the federal debt and the soaring inflation levels. We could have stopped the overbearing federal mandates and the charter breaches. And we could have stopped legislation that may imprison pastors for up to 5 years. And the reality is I could continue to go on. But my goal is not to keep you here till midnight and depress you, okay? My goal is to bring hope, because even though we could have stopped all of these things, the reality is we can't change the past, but the reality also is that we can change the future, and that is the hope that I bring into this room tonight and through this live stream right now, that we can change the future, and we actually have a major, not a minor, a major opportunity, but a very small, itty-bitty window to do that right now. When I first started This tour, I said this spring, now I have to say in the next 9 days, because it's between today, Thursday, and actually it's 8.5 days, today, right now, and next Friday at midnight Eastern Standard Time, which is 9 o'clock our time here. This is the window that we have to possibly do something that could set a new trajectory for the leadership of our nation. But before I get into those two things to cinch the night that we can all do to impact the future of our nation, I believe, I want to share a couple quick stories about why Robert and I feel so motivated to do this right now, to donate our entire spring into bringing this message to people like you. But I do also want you to know that I am not getting a kickback from the Conservative Party. I kind of wish I was by this point, actually, because I might be doing okay. I'm not getting a kickback from the Conservative Party. I don't work for a political candidate, though I will give you my honest opinion on which ones I like best if you want it. And I don't work for Elections Canada. But I do have someone that I do work for. I have a superior, two superiors actually, that I report to every single day, and they are the ones that I work for. These guys right here. And isn't that why we're in the room tonight, if we were to be honest? We love our nation, but we love our children, and we love our grandchildren. And we understand that we're not where we used to be as a nation. And if we don't see things begin to turn around, what will we have to pass on to them? This isn't a big emo grab, a big emotional grab. This is honest. That if we don't start to see things shift, what is the burden that these guys will have to carry into the future? I'd rather not have to answer that question. But there's also another reason why Rob and I were a little extra quick on the yes for this one, and it has to do with this picture right here. Okay, so what is this? This is a picture of two public health nurses that showed up at our door. Just kidding, it's not nurses. Since when do nurses carry guns and wear bulletproof vests, right? These were two police officers that were delivering us a health notice, okay? Now, I understand, I respect our law enforcement professionals big time. They got a tough job, and I actually believe that these guys didn't love this moment just as much as I didn't love this moment. But they were showing up on our doorstep to deliver us a notice of forced quarantine. Now, we were not COVID positive. We had no symptoms at all. We were as healthy as a family of little oxen, okay? Like, we were doing great, loving life. And so they issued me the notice, and I asked them, I said, well, can you unpack this for me? And they said, well, you were allegedly exposed to someone that was COVID-19 positive 12 days ago. And so public health has had a hard time getting a hold of you because, of course, I actually don't pick up numbers that say private, because it's usually the Conservative Party asking for donations. And so public health had not gotten through to me. And so they sent cops, okay? And so they issued me this notice, and they said, you were exposed to someone who was COVID-19 positive 12 days ago, and we're just catching up on the contact tracing. And I was honestly a bit confused because I work at home, we homeschool, our studio is in our house, and I hate to say it, it's kind of pathetic, but I'm really at that stage in my life where, if I go to the grocery store, it's like, party! Aisle 9, come on, Cheerios! It's like you just don't have a life when you're a working mom of little ones, right? And so I was genuinely confused about who I had been exposed to, and so I asked them, I said, well, who was I exposed to that was COVID positive? And they said, well, we're not allowed to tell you because that person has medical privacy rights. Glad you think that's funny, my God. But the irony, right? I was like, wow, so you mean I can't even ask a question about, I can't confirm or deny. And I began to think because I speak about things that some people don't like, right? And I'm like, you mean to tell me that somebody can just not like my TV show last week, and they can get COVID positive, and they can put me down on the I hugged her list, and I have no power in that? I have no voice in that. I can't confirm or deny. We can't confirm the contact. And so I was genuinely a bit confused by the intensity of the mandate. But we're law-abiding citizens, so I took the quarantine notice. I explained it to my husband when he got home. He ironically had just gone to pick up his Canadian passport because he had just become a Canadian. And I was like, welcome to Canada, hon, we're in jail. We're like, what is this, But to add to the intensity, I would have stopped right there and been okay and just explained it away in my head. These guys are just doing their jobs. But to add to the intensity, they patrolled our street that entire week with cruisers. Now, we live in rural New Brunswick on a sleepy dead-end street with a bunch of retirees. I've never seen a cop car on my street ever. And if you're coming to our street, it's not because you're driving through to Tim Hortons. You have to go to the end, turn around. If you're coming to our street, it's because you're actually coming to our street. And so we knew that we were being surveillanced that entire week. And I was like, really? You guys don't have something better to do with our law? We're going to comply. We're going to obey. We are the people who keep the law here. So I was I wasn't offended, but I was a bit rattled. And I had to be honest with that. And so when Rob and I would put the kids to bed at night, we would sit down and we would just talk. And, even though in our heads we're like, you know what, these guys are just doing their jobs. Our leaders are having a tough time. They're trying to figure it out. They're freaking out because of the healthcare system. We get that. But if we had to be honest, so in my head, I was like, I can explain this away. But in my heart, I was like, something is wrong. This is wrong. There was a sense of injustice. And Robert and I, during that time, really came to a question. And I think if we were to go throughout this room tonight, we would probably hear different stories, different details, but probably a few of us have come to the same question. And the question was this: where is our nation going? Where does this end? Where does this end where a family that didn't even do anything wrong is being put into forced quarantine, can't ask a question, and patrolled aggressively for an entire week? Where does this end? And so we went to Texas for 4 months to think about it. This brings me to my next story before I land the plane tonight. And this next story is about a conversation that I had with Reverend David Maines. How many of you guys know this face? Amazing man, a pastor to our entire nation in his time and in his prime. And David would always attend our prayer gatherings that we would have at Parliament. He was just such a father, and he would always come alongside. And when David came to the prayer events at Parliament that we would do, you don't tell David what to say and you don't give him a time. You just say, David, let us know when you're done. And David was such a heart guy, and he had just finished praying for godly government because even though he was primarily an evangelist and pastoral, he understood the importance of good government and how good government affects the people. And he had also just prayed for an issue that he cared deeply about, and that was the issue of abortion, the issue of life. And so David, after he prayed, he was a bit emotional and moved in his heart, visibly. He walked over to the side of the platform where I was standing, and he put his arm around me, and he began to share with me a story. And the story was about this bill, C-43, which actually came to the House of Commons in 1990, 1991. And this bill would have made it a criminal offense for a healthy baby to be aborted unless the mother's life was at risk and unless there was a medical reason to the mother. And so it was trying to find a compromise. It was trying to find a compromise of protecting women who were legitimately in medical distress over a pregnancy, protecting unborn children, and kind of to bring a compromise. And at that time, this, wasn't super controversial. It would have eliminated abortions of convenience, right? So so we were at a different place in the timeline. Now, this was the last time that a piece of abortion legislation actually passed through the House of Commons. It was supported by the Liberals, it was supported by the NDP, and it was supported by the Conservatives. And so it passed through the House of Commons, and it made its way to the Senate. In order to become law, a bill has to pass through the Senate as well. And David explained to me about how when it passed through the House of Commons, the pressure just went into like 12 out of 10 mode on the senators. Like the pro-choice community that didn't like this bill just began to come at these senators. The hate mail was intense, the phone calls were intense, the threats were intense that were coming at these senators from the pro-choice community. But there was also a lot of anger and negative pressure that was coming at the senators from the faith community, from the church, from the pro-life community, because there were many in the church that felt like this bill wasn't good enough and that it wasn't okay to have abortions at any point, even if the mother's life was at risk. And so they were getting vitriol from the pro-choice community and vitriol from the pro-life community, and they weren't feeling the general support of the nation. And so they felt like it was a lose-lose by the time it got to the Senate. And so David shared with me, he said, Feytene, there were a couple pro-life senators that I personally knew that were pro-life. But because they felt like they just couldn't win, that no matter what they did, they were going to be attacked, they decided not to show up for the vote. And because they didn't show up to the vote, that bill came to a tie. The speaker, I'm told, abstained and didn't break the tie. And so because of that, it died in a neutral state, because a tie bill is a non-passed bill. And so it died right there in the Senate and never became law. Now, if that bill would have passed, it probably would have stopped, I'm estimating, probably 80% of abortions at least. By this point in the game, in 2022, that would be somewhere around 3 million millennials, Gen Xers, Gen Yers, Gen Zers that would be in the nation today, contributing to our tax base, contributing to our infrastructure. About 3 million babies is what that vote cost. And David looked down at me, and this was the moment that changed my life, and I pray that it touches a few of your hearts tonight. He looked down at me with tears in his eyes, and he said, Feytene, those senators could have showed up. He said, but they didn't. And with tears brimming in his eyes, he said, Feytene, the nation goes to those who show up to the meeting. And what struck me in that moment is he wasn't talking about a church meeting. He wasn't talking about a prayer meeting, even though we were at a prayer meeting and we both believe in the power of prayer and we've seen God do miracles, so he meant no disrespect by it. But what struck me is that he wasn't talking about a prayer meeting. He was talking about a governmental meeting where people actually had the authority to vote. And I have to be honest. I told you I was going to be honest. I have to be honest. There's been a couple times over this, or many times actually, over this past week and a bit, where I've wondered if Providence had David Main share that story with me in 2008. So that it could be sent like a message in a bottle. Because he's in heaven now. He's not here to share it. But I can share it. Because the truth is, David was right. He was right. He was right in 1991. He was right in 2013. He was right in 2020. He was right in 2021. He was right. And I don't know why we haven't been willing to talk about this in church. Because to me, these seem like a whole lot of biblical issues that we've rattled off tonight. You know? My people perish for lack of knowledge. And I feel like these words are so pregnant with revelation and hope for us right now as we enter into these next 9 days. And so what do you do with this? You know, like, do you just go to Boston Pizza and have some French onion soup? Like, what do you do with this? Like, the math doesn't lie. The data's there. The opportunities are there. Well, I believe that a wise person will simply say this: what is the most impactful thing that I can do with this information right now? The reality is like we can't climb back into 2021. We can't climb back into 2020. We can't climb back into these different moments. But we can turn this pain into purpose, right? And into power and into intelligence. The reality is that we are not in a general election right now, and we might not be until 2025, right? So you can't split the vote between the Conservatives and the PPC because there is no vote between the Conservatives and the PPC this summer or anytime soon. And no matter how much you like them, and I have a lot of friends gravitating to these parties right now because they've been so disillusioned by the Conservatives over this past season, that no matter how much you like them, you can't vote PPC, CHP, Libertarian Party, Rhino Party, or any other party this spring or summer because there's no election with these guys or people on the ballot. But we are at another 0.2% moment, where traditionally 0.2% of Canadians have determined the names on the ballot. We are in a Conservative Party leadership race. And again, this is a Feytene For My Canada announcement. If this type of an opportunity was being presented in any other party where I felt like people like you and I could advance our views and values, I would be up here doing the exact same presentation for any other political context. Whether we like it or not, people like you and I believe, this is my, I feel like I know it in my knower slide, okay? People like you and I will determine who the next Conservative leader in Canada is, either by our engagement or by our absence, right? Because if we don't show up, if people who care about faith, family, freedom, fiscal stewardship, the sanctity of life, if we don't show up, somebody else is going to, and most likely somebody that would vote differently than us. And I believe that the next Conservative leader will determine who the next Prime Minister is. We need somebody that has the favor of heaven upon them. We don't need another flipper. I'm sorry. But we need somebody that's got a backbone, somebody that's got integrity, somebody that's going to stand for the full spectrum of conservatism that so many Canadians hold dear to their hearts. I believe that the next Conservative leader will determine who the next Prime Minister is because of the law of dominoes in politics. And I also want to say this, that I actually believe that the next Prime Minister will determine our vulnerability in the global context, our debt, our inflation levels, our resource development, our charter freedoms, our value for life, our international relations, like our relationship with Israel, and so much more. I actually believe the very fundamentals of our society are at stake right now. That we're either going to have a leader that just serves Canada over to interests that might not be in the benefit of Canada, or we're going to have a leader that stands up and says, no, Canadians are smart. They know how to manage their own lives. They know how far to drive in a day, no matter what the carbon emissions meter says. They know how to raise their children. They know how to, they know how to govern their own lives. They're actually very, very smart people, right? And I believe that this is what's at stake. I might be wrong. And I'm willing to be wrong. I'm willing to look back on these last couple months and be like, wow, that was a lot of energy for wrong. I'm willing to be wrong. But I'm not willing to be right in my gut at what's at stake here and look back and say, in a window, we don't know where our tipping point is. We don't know. We don't know if we're 500 votes away from our tipping point right now. We don't know if we're 1,000 votes away from our tipping point. We don't know where, but I do know one thing. I don't want to look back at this wondering if we might have hit it, if I would have just left it all on the field. Because these are moments you don't get back. I believe all that I've talked about tonight will be determined largely between now and June the 3rd. Why? Because June the 3rd is the deadline. This is the day that the big, that big door on the ark, it kind of goes, it's like the last little giraffe just barely got in there, the last little spider's hanging on. Like, no matter how much you want to get on the boat on June the 4th, you can't. The door will be shut, okay? So June the 3rd is the last day where you can sign up to be a member to vote, because only members get to vote for who's on the ballot. Anyone who is a permanent resident in Canada who's 14 or older is qualified. This is important intel because a lot of times people who aren't Canadian citizens and who are younger just automatically discount themselves. But this is actually a powerful moment where some entire families can sign up and their kids can have the first vote of their life. We have two choices right now as we start to wind this down with the two opportunities that we have. One is we can continue on the same trajectory, or two, we can take a $15 chance. What if there's voter fraud? What if there isn't? A $15 chance at change. I had a lady in New Brunswick, she came up to me after the presentation. She's like, Feytene, I'm just going to go talk to all my friends and say, is your nation worth $15? I was like, lady, put that on a t-shirt, please. I will wear it. So the two invitations in the last couple minutes here. Number one, I've said it a bunch of times already, is you have an opportunity to be a part of the 0.2% that I believe will determine the future leader of the Conservative Party, very likely the next Prime Minister in Canada, and possibly definitely the type of leadership that we will have going forward. And so in order to become a member, or in order to vote, you have to become a member by June the 3rd, and we're encouraging people not to do it through the Conservative Party site if you haven't already done it, but to actually do it through our site. The reason for that is because that will register you with us so we get a bit of a sense of our numbers, and also it'll give us an opportunity to walk with you and hold your hand through the process and actually give you a voter's guide. We're going to be breaking down where all the members or all the candidates stand on the critical issues that we've talked about tonight and that Canadians are often asking us about. We're going to be talking about, vaccine mandates. We're going to be talking about the debt. We're going to be talking about the life issue. We're going to be talking, like all the questions we normally get, we'll be putting this into a voter's guide and just giving it to you. You can take it or leave it. It's our opinion, but hopefully you will find it valuable. And so if you sign up through our website or at the back table before you leave the building tonight, you will have those privileges of being a part of a movement. Because I'm not actually interested, I hate to say it, I'm not actually interested in building the Conservative Party's database. I'm interested in building a movement, a family of people from all across Canada that care about this stuff, and we've just gotten a little bit smarter over the years. Number two is we want to invite you to sign up to become a mobilizer. What is a mobilizer? A mobilizer is simply a person that says, I'm going to use my influence to bring people with me, because the reality is that there's people that you will and can talk to in the next 9 days that I won't. That won't watch my TV show, that won't come to a presentation like this, that won't watch the YouTube video, but there are people that are like-minded people that actually care about the things that we talked about tonight, that if you talk to them and let them know about this opportunity, they'll be all about it. And this is the power of responding to this particular point. If just 5 of you, okay, so Kevin and the front row, if just 5 of you took this seriously in the next 9 days and said, I'm going to go find 10 people who are like-minded, who care about these things, and I'm going to get them to sign up through the For My Canada site, that would increase the power of that little chunk of people there to 50 votes in this electoral outcome. If just half of the new people that these guys bring into it did the same in the next 9 days, that would increase the power of this group to 280. If just half of those did the same, we'd be at 320, or 1320. If just half of those did the same, we would be at 10,680. If just half of those did the same, you ready for this? This is where it gets fun. I have a dream. I have a dream. Oh, geez. We would be at 94,920. Okay? This is what it means to be fruitful and multiply. And I predict that this would be the kingmaker position, and no matter who wins, they're going to have to deal with people who care about the things that we care about, because we're going to be present in the room. This is the power of this room tonight. So I'm not discouraged that we don't have 10,000 people in the room hearing this message, because I know that if each one of us simply shared with our sphere of influence over the next 9 days, we actually could reach that many people if they continue to do the same. So it really does start with us. been at this since about 2004. And if I could just humbly say this as I close, don't assume that someone else is going to do this one. As a matter of fact, it's been my brute force experience that usually people don't. And that's probably why we're at where we're at. I don't think we have the license to walk away from this night and not at least do what we can, if we care about these things. If we don't care about these things, that's something else. But if we actually care about these things, like 9 days is going to go one way or another, right? And so I want to encourage you, get on your contact list. Start texting your friends tomorrow. Start calling people. You have no idea how much people might appreciate you tapping their shoulder. I had a 91-year-old woman who came up to me in Quebec with tears in her eyes. She said, Feytene, I've been in church my whole life. I didn't know that I could vote to determine who's going to be on the ballot. She went to the back, got her credit card out, and for the first time in her life at 91, signed up to vote in a leadership race at 91. I thought, if anybody has permission to just roll over and play dead, but please don't, ma'am, then it would be somebody who's 91, right? But she's like, I'm in. And so what I'm going to do now is, we have worked hard to make this as easy as possible. We have a response form. This is my form of an altar call tonight. We have a response form here, and on this response form, you have an opportunity to let us know if you want to respond to what you've heard tonight. The first checkbox says, yes, I want to become a member so that I can vote. If you check that off and you're not already a member of the Conservative Party, if you check this off, I want to ask you to zip it up tonight. Like, to actually do it tonight before you leave this building, before you leave the parking lot. There's 2 ways you can do it. The first way is you can just put your phone up to that QR code. It'll pop you right up to the form, or you can put formycanada.ca in your phone. Click on this big red button right at the top that says Get Membership so you can vote. And if you do that, tonight, you will be registered to vote. It's $15. That doesn't go to Feytene and the For My Canada Association. It goes to the Conservative Party. If you don't want to do it through your phone, or you don't know how to do it through your phone, then just fill out this form here and fill out the bottom part. And we actually have 4 to 6 incredible volunteers at the back that are willing to take this form for you right tonight and put it into the system, so that we know that you're actually activated. Because what we don't want is for people to go home and have a hard time with it and then never be able to actually complete it. And also, we all know that you go home, there's a hockey game on, your toilet might overflow, your cat might vomit, your kettle might be going off. There's things, life happens, right? So I don't mean any disrespect in that, but we just know that we want to be here to help you zip it up. There's a couple other things on here as well. You can sign up to become a mobilizer. This is a person that's saying, in the next 9 or 8.5 days, I'm going to use my influence. If you do sign up for that, we will send you an email with some quick links, with a 3-minute video, some ideas on what you can do to be effective in this. We also have a team call on Monday night that we'll invite you to. If you're already a member of the Conservative Party and you're like, I want that voter's guide, then you can just check that off, give us your email, and we'll put you in our email list. And if you want to donate to help us pay the bills on this tour, you're more than welcome to do that. You will not get a tax receipt. 100% of your reward will be in heaven. Retirement has its benefits, okay? And then you can fill that out on the back. So what I'm going to do now is, our team is actually going to start to hand these out. And if you don't want one, just let it go by. But if you do, grab it, fill it out. And again, the only thing that I ask is that you actually zip this up if you want to vote before you leave tonight. And as they're doing that, I'm going to show a special video from someone that many of us love and respect. This is a message for you, for the room, for Kevin Stade, from the Honorable Stockwell Day.
Hi, it's Stockwell Day here. I've been working on election campaigns for probably 40 years. I can tell you that the ones that win are the ones that have a clear and basic strategy that can be used by volunteers like you at the local level. This plan that Feytene has put together is probably one of the best I've ever seen. Please get involved. This campaign really is one that is going to make a difference for our country at such a time as this. We need you. Thank you.
Okay, so signs and wonders. I'm done 15 minutes early tonight. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to play a music video for those of you that want to fill this response form out. That'll give you a few minutes. Whoops. For those of you that want to sneak out, that is the end of our presentation tonight. I hope you appreciated it. I sure appreciated you being here. Oh, wow, guys. Wow, thank you. Wow, thanks. Wow, thanks, that goes deep. Thank you for that. And so if you do need to go, feel free to go. For those that want to stay and do a bit of a Q&A, talk about some of the stuff that we opened up tonight, I would be happy to do that. If you need to sign up for your membership, the girls are at the back table. The team is at the back table. I'll give you a couple minutes.
And on the majesty of mountains, touching skies of blue, and my heart's overwhelmed for this nation that I love. This is my song for Canada, a song for unity and a song for freedom. Oh Lord our God, may your healing come, and may the walls that divide us no longer stand. Oh Lord our God, heal our land.
A good question just came up. You cannot pay for friends in this. You do have to pay your membership yourself, and that's a check and balance that the party puts in so that people aren't like signing up dead people and dogs and the whole church who may or may not want to be signed up. And so you do have to pay for it yourself, and you do have to pay by check or credit card. And again, that's an ID check to ensure that people are actually doing this for themselves. So if you need, the team at the back will help you navigate some of that stuff. So, okay, yeah, why don't we do this? Okay, so we've got
Feytene.
just a second here. I'm going to pull down the sound. Okay, I think we are jump starting the Q&A. Let's go.
Sorry about that. So I have a 14-year-old grandson and a 16-year-old granddaughter.
Yes.
And I thought I could talk to them and
Yep.
sign it up and pay for them, but I can't. Can
No,
I?
okay, that's the one exception. Thank you. This is a great question. The one exception is family members. So husband and
Wonderful.
wives can sign up together. Your children. I think, Tamara, can grandparents? You have to live in the same house, they said. So,
So my daughter, their mom, can
yeah.
sign them up.
The mom can sign them up and should.
Thank you.
Tonight. And again, these are just fraud checks so that people don't sign up, people that don't want to be signed up. Yeah, go ahead, Tamara.
So I don't have a question, but I do want to tell you that what Dr. Maines said to you is absolutely true. It goes to the people that are at the meeting. Let me tell you what happened for...
Stand up and turn around. And
What happened for me, nobody actually knows about this yet, so this is new information. During the 30 days that we have to run a campaign, we had a lot of volunteers, which was wonderful because we were able to do what we needed to do, which was get out and find our supporters. And yet I still lost by, I think it was 1,600 votes it said on there. Yeah. Guess what? We had 4,000 identified voters who did not vote that day. So had they made the effort to get out and vote. It was a very rainy day. I totally get it. We did our best to go door to door and encourage people to get out and vote. But please, do get involved. It makes a huge difference if you just get engaged. And I love that you continue to talk about the fact that we need to be more knowledgeable in how we engage. So this presentation is fantastic. I really much appreciate it. Please do consider following me on Facebook. I'm trying to produce videos that will give people a little bit more information about what's going on, because I do think we're often kind of bamboozled by what's actually happening. So do stay engaged and follow through, because it does make a difference. Thank you so much.
Wow, thank you, Tamara. Yeah, I can give it to Kevin. That's amazing. You guys have a champion right here in the riding. Stay connected with her. You should start like a local civic engagement movement or whatever. Yeah, we'll see. Maybe what I'll do is at the end of this, I'll maybe send out a courtesy email if you and I can talk to everybody in this area to say, okay, anyone that wants to connect with Tamara, why don't you have a barbecue at your house? We'll see if we can get 3,000 people to show up. Amazing. Okay, do we have any other questions or comments? Go ahead. Say your name and your question or clarification point, comment, whatever you.
I'm Lisa Reimer. I never hear from Canada how many babies have been aborted. I always hear, like in the U.S., what I heard for the first time is that, it was over 60,000 or 60,000 abortion, or 60 million, in the U.S., but California and New York never count. They're not obligated to count their abortions, but I've never heard Canada what their rate is.
Yeah, well, this is one of the unfortunate things is in Canada, abortion clinics and even hospitals are not mandated to have to report their statistics on abortion. So even the stats that we do have are actually incomplete. It's been harder and harder to get statistics over the last few years, but generally, over the last 30 years, it's been about 100, like what's been reported is about 100,000. That doesn't include the abortion clinics that don't report. It doesn't include the morning after pill. So that 100,000 is actually a very conservative number, but that's where I get the 3 million from, is because 100,000 over 30 years is about 3 million. So, yeah, but that's something that would be great if we actually had real statistics on this, but we don't. Yeah, any other questions, comments? Hi.
Hi, I'm Dixie.
Hi, Dixie.
I was just wondering, I have been a member in the past, and I don't know if I should sign up again, or I get the emails.
Now, just because you get the emails doesn't mean you're a member.
Yeah.
Most memberships are only for 1 year, so if you signed up 2 years ago to vote in that leadership race, if you don't know you're a member, for sure, you're probably not.
Yeah.
That's kind of a good gauge.
Yeah.
And to be honest, the office is so overwhelmed right now that you can't even call and ask them, is my membership active? Because they're so overwhelmed. So what I'm suggesting to do to people in your situation is it's better to be safe than sorry. It's only $15. And I'm told that if you are an active member, they'll just add that on. And so they'll give you an extra year, is what I'm told. But even if not, it's only $15, and you can probably wrangle them for a refund in a couple months when things chill out.
Great. I didn't want to have, fraudulent voting.
Yeah, no, just sign up again just to be safe, to make sure. Because once they have your email and your phone number, they will continue to contact you even if you're not an active member. So, good question. That's a great question. Yeah, go ahead. What's your name?
Hi, my name is Tia, and
Hi, Tia.
I just wanted to thank you for the stand that you've taken for pro-life, and you've done it publicly. And 20 years ago, I put together a program to take out to the schools through the pregnancy
Could I
centers.
just stop you for a second? Could somebody shut the doors so the noise from the foyer is kind of muffling you a bit? Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
So 20 years ago, I took out a program to the schools in the Lower Mainland, and it's been all over BC, trained a lot of centers across Canada just to teach abstinence and help the kids to be empowered to know that they have a choice.
Good for you.
And one of the things we do through the Pregnancy Center, and I'm still doing, even though I'm a grandma, busy and, all kinds of other things, but we show a prenatal video in every class that we're in. And often the reviews that come back, the kids say that's the best part of the class, that they want to see that, that they feel, they're more in touch with how they came into the world. And I just think it's God's divine, hand upon this program.
Yeah.
So keep on praying for all of those who are presenting, our healthy relationships, abstinence. And it's a pro-life message, but we just, we don't use any Christianese. We just simply, share facts and science, the science of pregnancy and all of the rest of it. So it's been a privilege, but I thank you for taking a stand because I've seen your program, and you're fearless. I love it. So.
Try to do it with a smile. Thank you. Yeah. No, it's not Christianese. It is sciences, right? That's awesome. It'll be a new term. Okay. Do we have a couple? Let's take a couple more questions.
Hi, just a very practical question with the voting for the Conservative leadership race.
Yes.
Are there online options or is it only an in-person vote? And if so, where are the locations made available?
Yeah, if they do it the same way they did last time, which again, I don't work for the Conservative Party, so I don't have all the ins on this, but I'm assuming it's going to be the same as last time. So what that will mean is you will get a ballot in the mail. You will probably get that ballot around July. You will have to have it back by early September. The votes will be counted on September the 10th. I don't think they're going to have an online option, but they haven't officially announced. And to be honest, it's better if they don't, because the online digital voting is actually easier to mess with. And so it's actually better if you have paper ballots with eyeballs on those ballots. So I think it'll come in July. They haven't actually announced yet, but this is why we're encouraging people to get on our email list and sign up through us, because we'll walk you through the whole process. And so as soon as we know, we'll be like, hey guys, the ballot's coming. If you don't receive your ballot within the next week, let us know and we'll help you fight for your ballot. Because for whatever reason, sometimes people's ballots get lost in the mail every once in a while. So sometimes we do need to fight to get ballots reissued. So great question, great question. Okay, any other questions before we close it up and do handshakes and hugs? Or knuckle punches, or elbow punches, or bumps if we... Hey.
Feytene, I have a question. Okay, so I donate to the TV program, or Voltal, right?
Thank you.
Okay, so, but this looks like it's a different kind of organization, right?
Yeah, you're very observant, yes. So you donate to Feytene TV?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, sir.
Right.
So we actually have two organizations. One is our charity, which is the TV show and the prayer events and the more Christian discipleship type stuff that we do. That is in our charitable container. We actually created a secondary container, which is For My Canada, which is nonprofit, and it is so that we can do this kind of stuff. And we, because this edges on the line of possibly being partisan, even though I worked really hard to present information in a nonpartisan way. And so we created For My Canada so that we could do the advocacy, political engagement type stuff through that bucket. But it's the lesser active of our two organizations, so that's probably why it hasn't been on your radar until now. But we have teams that oversee both of them, so...
Okay, so my second question is, if I'm already donating,
yes.
Do I need to fill this out again in order to get the same advice or material that you're going to be sending out to those that sign up?
No. Everything that we're doing is free. So if you want to donate to help us with the cost of this tour,
I realize that, but what I'm saying is. I will get the same information.
Yes.
Then, regardless of whether I fill this out or not, if I'm already a donator to.
You know what? I would, to be safe, if you want to make sure you get the voter's guide,
Right.
just check off checkbox number 3 there.
Yeah.
Put your email on, and that will make sure that you get on the right email list. Because the Feytene TV email list is different than the For My Canada
Okay,
Voters Guide
okay,
email list. So
right.
that's a great question. And thank you for supporting us every month. Amazing.
Quick question for you.
Sure.
My friend Anne, who owns the home that I live in, I signed up her as a member under her email,
Okay.
but I used my credit card for myself and her. Is that going to cause a problem?
It might.
I know, I was thinking
It
that.
might.
Yeah.
So this is one of the reasons why they're actually a month behind right now, I'm told, in confirming memberships, because they go through and they try to do fraud checks. What I would do is I would call the party.
Okay.
If you can't find their number, email us and we'll give it to you. It's I don't have it memorized, but I would call them and just let them know what you did. In the meantime, re-sign up with your own, and then you'll probably have to fight to get your $15 back if you want it back.
I'm willing to do that.
And yeah, so unfortunately, it's high maintenance. It really is, but it's their only way of making sure people don't sign up people that don't want to be signed up, basically.
No, I understand. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, I'll do one more question, then we'll close this up if anybody has one, unless nobody has one. Okay, one over here. Great.
If you're a member of another party, can you sign up with the Conservative Party?
Good question. Okay, so on the Conservative Party membership form, it does ask you to say that you are not a member of another federal political party. Okay, this was the answer I got. I asked a national councillor. They said in Canada, there's only 4 official federal parties, because in order to be a federal party, you have to have, I think it's 12 seats in Parliament. So right now, the 4 official federal parties are the Liberals, the Conservatives, the Bloc, and the NDP. And so it's generally frowned upon to be active members in multiples of those 4 parties. But this is what I've been told, okay? Conduct yourself in accordance with your conscience. If you're a member of another party and you're like, you know, I just want to be safe rather than sorry, then just call that party tomorrow, cancel, sign up here so you can vote, reevaluate on the other side. But my understanding, this question most often comes from people that are members of the PPC and the CHP. My understanding is that because those are not official federal parties, it's not a big deal. And secondly, the Conservatives want you back. So you're what they would call the swing vote. They want you back. So, but at the end of the day, conduct yourself in accordance with your conscience. This is my understanding of it. Would you add anything to that, or was that's accurate? And that's what a national councillor told me, though I have received conflicting ideas on that. But if a national councillor says that, I trust a national councillor. Okay, great question. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, everybody. I'll hang out and chat with anyone who wants to chat. Might go rescue my mom and the volunteers there as well with my laptop, sign some of y'all up. But thanks again for being here tonight. And thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Brent. Thank you, worship team. Thank you.
I have felt the wind upon my face on this Atlantic shore, and in the west I've stood and watched the noble eagle soar, and I have seen the fields of gold and green and yellow too, and on the majesty of mountains touching skies of blue, and my heart's overwhelmed for this nation that I love. This is my song for Canada.